you have a healthy relationship, that you have having sex often, there's less argument, there's less stress, there's less bickering. In your brain, every time that you have sex, you're connected to that person and it sends neurons saying, this person has my back. This person is attracted to me. This person is my partner.
When you don't have sex for a long period of time,
there is no connection.
How you start to feel so disconnected, then you feel more angry, resentful, to look somewhere else.
Look for something else.
I agree.
And having the pleasure of release in other places.
This is Vivian Raul.
And this is Raul Villacis.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the God, Money, and Sex podcast. My name is Vivian Raul, and I'm here with the love of my life.
My name is Raul Villacis, and I'm excited for this podcast because right after this, we go to a date night. So we love date nights. We love the podcast because every time that I feel like, man, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time because I'm busy doing all these things, we make time for things that are important. We make time for us to contribute, for us to connect, for us to create, because at the end of the day, if we are not connecting with each other, we're gonna be running around in circles. So if you're watching this, maybe right now you're watching it on the way home to work from work, maybe you just found us on YouTube, you found us on Facebook, just know that our intention here is to give you some insight on the three things that we believe in. Is God, money, and sex. So welcome to the show. Yes. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, well, I was driving down here too, so we could do the podcast. Busy day, and every time I walk in here, like, you're always doing something, and it's not just like, passively. You're just giving it your all and creating and doing. And I always think like, well, maybe he's going to be tired. We're not going to do this right now, or just let's leave it for next week, and you just transition into being here, like you said, like just fully devoted, just giving it our all. And, when you give from a place with the right intention, it just comes together. It just, something about it just comes together. So I think, intention is everything. So if you're listening to us, to this, we want to welcome you. We love relationships. We know that they're the hardest thing sometimes in our lives, but they're one of the greatest teachers. I'm coming down here and just, I was thinking about like the weather, and I'm thinking about the relationships. I'm thinking like all these things, right? Like, and just having conversations with the queens and having conversations even with my son that he's in a relationship now, and just thinking like how profound a relationship could be, how much it could teach us, or how it could drive us up the wall. It really can.
If you think about it, everything is relationships.
Everything.
Business is relationships, marriage relationships, friendships, relationships. Our whole world revolves around our ability and our capacity to build on relationships, to connect with other people. And we're going to be challenged as human beings. We're going to be challenged in every single area: friendships,
absolutely,
relationships, customers, clients. And I did a podcast, not a podcast, my Daily Edge. So if you don't know what Daily Edge is, make sure you look up Daily Edge podcast in Spotify. Every single day, I have over 1,100 Daily Edge messages that I've sent. And the theme for this week, I don't have a theme on a weekly basis. I just go with whatever it is that's going on in the moment, right? When I record this podcast. And for me, it was more of giving people the benefit of the doubt, not reacting to life. I had conversations with some of my clients this week and that I'm coaching them, and a lot of people are going through shit.
A lot.
Like, and sometimes we underestimate as a entrepreneur, as somebody who's driven, that we have the capacity to handle certain shit. But the average person doesn't have the capacity. So we have to have more empathy because everyone is going through some shit, and not react to life and not just jump into conclusions. Give people the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes we are very quick to judge, very quick to just cut heads off, very quick to just try to burn shit to the ground, as opposed to step back and say, is this useful or not useful? Is this reaction going to get me closer to what I want, or is this reaction getting me farther away than what I want in life? And most important, is this reaction who I want to become? Is this really anchoring who I want to become, who I want to be known for?
And I think that's easier said than done, because when it's happening in front of you, you just, you wish that you had the empathy, and you wish that you would slow down and took a different approach. But sometimes like we don't filter that. And I think that's what, if you're listening to this, one of the things that we want you to do is to start having this awareness of like, how can I get better at this relationship, whether it's with my money, relationship with God, relationship with sex, my spouse, my connection. I think that that's like one of the biggest things that even for me, like my journey is that it's like, how do I bring my everyday life to like everything that's happening and how do I make it better?
If one thing I will tell the listeners in here, if you're a woman listening to this podcast, and if you're married to a man who's an entrepreneur who's out there hunting every single day, cut him some slack. Like, you have no idea the amount of pressure businessmen are facing right now in this market, right now with this uncertainty. That's why I'm excited for the Leadership Summit that's coming up next month. And we have like the biggest turnout right now because men are looking for a tribe to belong to that are going to be empowered to handle the challenges they're going to go through life.
So for the people that are listening that maybe don't know about the Leadership Summit, maybe you could tell them like what it is.
Well, it's a 2-day event, men only. I'm sorry, ladies, if you. We had it one time. I think twice we had women and men, and it wasn't the same because
it wasn't. It takes the energy off.
Men was just kind of looking at the women.
They were holding back.
And then Vivian told me, you know what? We have to have an event for women, an event for men, because men need to be men, women need to give themselves the pressure to be women. And even though we feel like now one is better than the other,
that's right.
We're different. So we need to have the space in a different environment.
Right. And if you are looking to connect with your partner, we're also having an event for couples. If you wanted to join that, we're going to create the space for growth and love and for couples. But this event is just for men. And I think that's beautiful that you do that because there's a place. So I go to the events only to like stay in the back and to hold the space for all the men there and to support and to love you. But there's something about men just coming together and speaking their truth without feeling judged, without holding back, with just in the sense of vulnerability that each man speaks. It's beyond words of how could I like explain what happens at the events. So if it's something that resonates with you, that speaks to your heart, that right now that you need a group of men that you need to be around, like I couldn't say anything more than just be there.
I gotta just tell you right now, you cannot afford to be alone. If you're a man that's driven, if you're a man that wants to go somewhere, if you're a man that wants to build an empire, you cannot afford to do it alone.
Yeah,
I mean, we've been conditioned as men to just try to figure things on our own, and that system doesn't serve us. That system isolates us and puts us in a state of feeling that we're not doing enough, or not being enough, or not having enough, and then it takes us to a place of depression as opposed to expansion.
And whether it's men or women, I feel like we're in this times where we feel like, well, there's only so much time that I have, so I got to do as much as I can right now, and I don't need anyone else.
And that's what you got to be part of a tribe. You have to be part of a tribe. If you're doing this alone, I just want you to imagine this, all right?
It's so complicated.
You grow old, you're in the deathbed, and who have you impacted? Like if it's just your family, great, but like I want to impact millions of people. I mean, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just my drive. Maybe you're not resonated with this message, but I truly feel that the men who are called to be leaders, they need to find a tribe of leaders that will hold them to a higher standard. Because the moment that we hold men to a higher standard, the game changes. I mean, the men that are coming to the events, they're not average men. These men are playing at a life at a different level. So therefore, they need to be held accountable at a different level. That comes to today with a guy very successful, very wealthy, and he was just telling me all the shit that he's going through. And from the outside, you look at him and like, oh, he has everything together. But once you start getting on the inside, you start realizing like, shit, there's a lot of insecurities, a lot of challenges. And we all need somebody that will coach us, that will tell us the truth, that will not sugarcoat shit to help us go to the next level. I have that. I need that. And I pay people a lot of money to tell me the things, not that I want to hear, but the things that I need to hear.
That's right.
You're one of them. You're one of my biggest teachers that you tell me, here's the truth, Raul. Here's what you're facing. Here's not what you don't want to see.
And you don't pay me enough.
Yeah, I agree. You're the most underpaid. But our kids wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Our kids will say, Mom,
oh, I know, please.
You get everything.
Don't let our kids get started. But then it's also because I know my worth, right? So then I know what I bring into the table, into the relationship, but that's like a whole other podcast. But then I've been also, because I'm part of the edge culture, and I've been talking to men too that need a little bit of insight when it comes to relationships. And when I speak to them, it's just like, you give it your all. Like this men, like they do far and above what they do in the business world. Like they're just kicking ass, right? Like they have everything together. And then when they get back home, it's like you've, like almost burnt everything to the ground, and you haven't picked up stuff that needed to be cleaned up, needed to be healed, needed to be restored.
That's the word. That's the word, right? How do we heal all those things? Because a lot of men, we're good at hiding. We're very good at hiding, and we hide in our business. We hide on the other things that we could be good at.
Right.
But when it comes to like relationships, that's what we have a program right now that we recorded the training a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yes, for us, the two of us.
Is the power couple training.
Yes.
And I would tell you right now, that's probably going to be one of the most impactful trainings that we put together, because it talks about like the real shit that men and women are going through when they get together, because love is not enough.
Right. And it's not, and then we're also like, we're here not from a place of like, okay, we got it all together. Because I don't think that we're there yet, but where we are right now, I feel like we've put in so much time, money, and energy into our relationship that's the reason why we're able to talk about this. Because I know like in the past, like I've signed up for so many things, I've gone to so many seminars, and then looking from like the back end, the back door of where that relationship was, it wasn't where I needed it to be. And I think that's why we created this, and why it pushed us to like say like, well, where do we want to be in our relationship? And then for us to be able to teach, then how do we really build on that? And I think that's the beautiful space, that as uncomfortable as it may be to get to that place, because it takes so much of like letting go and submitting and healing and loving and learning and so much more. It's like, okay, now we're in this place where I feel, because I mean, I don't know if you know this, ladies, but it takes so much for us to say like, I'm ready to teach you what I learned. I'm ready to be here and be like this open book that you could see and feel all my faults, and yet I still came through to the other side. And from like the deepest parts of my hell, like I'm in heaven. And I think that's really hard for us to step into that place. And it's taking me years. It's taking me years to be here and to say like, it feels good.
And the beautiful thing is that you just getting started. The
True.
beautiful thing is that we are just in the beginning. That's what I feel when I talk to people about what we've built here. Is like, man, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Yes,
this is just the beginning. I mean, this event feels like it's going to be like the first event. I'm just as excited as I was, and probably not as nervous as I was in the first event, but I'm excited. Like I said, because I know that we're building something that is going to last generations.
For the leadership summit or for the couples retreat?
For the leadership summit.
Oh, okay.
I'm most excited for the couples retreat. The couples
I'm excited for the couples retreat.
Couples retreat for me is more of a fun activity that we get to experience with couples that we are either coaching or we met, and for me that's just an opportunity to connect at a deeper level with people that we want to hang out, that we want to travel the world with, that we want to change the world with.
It is fun, but it's also healing. And I think like, if you hear anything from this podcast, is that, when you're in a relationship, I think you learn to heal every step of the way, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's something just like yourself. The relationship teaches you to go a little deeper. And that's the beautiful part of like, okay, what part of me needs to be like done with?
Yeah. So let's talk about, we had a video that I wanted to react to. The pastor this weekend did a great sermon. Talk a little bit about what was the topic.
So we got to the church this week, and every week I like to go to church. Every week I love, what they have to say. And this week he was talking about sex. And he just said it plain out and just open. He was like, we're talking about sex this week. And there was like total silence. You could hear like a pin drop. And I'm thinking like, and he said it. He was like, this is one of the things that we need to talk about the most, yet it's like so like not
especially
spoken.
in the church. I mean, for us, we talk about sex all the time.
All the time. Our kids are like, please don't talk about it anymore, because we're in this place where like we've cleaned that back, and because we're in a healthy, loving relationship, we're able to talk about it, and we want to talk to everybody else. But especially when you think about talking about sex in church, even the picture sometimes doesn't go together, even though like God uses sex loving expression, sexuality, immorality. Like he uses it all in the Bible. Yet so many few of us could refer back specific places, moments where he talks about this. And I also believe like the pastor did a beautiful job just explaining it and painting the picture of how there's such a place right now in the world where we feel like we want more, and the more that we get, the less satisfied we feel.
And that's the punchline for the sermon, was that we are trying to feed our flesh
All the time.
all the time. And sex was meant to be a connection with God as opposed to just a satisfaction for men. And that's what I got at least from that sermon. We always talk about like how sex for us is a connection with God.
Right.
Like when we come together and we're experiencing a sexual experience is when we are closer to know God, to feel that God is
Right.
giving us the opportunity to even reproduce. And now we've turned sex more into like, okay, it's just as fun as eat something. I want to eat in a different restaurant, so I want to have a different sexual experience.
With a different partner.
With a different partner, with a different this. And then that's when we kind of create this vision in our mind of what sex is supposed to be like, as opposed to really know that sex is supposed to connect us deeper with our partner, with the person that we want to experience life with.
Because how many of us ever think that, okay, let me look back on the Bible to see like, how can I connect sexually with my partner, feel satisfied the way that God is telling me to do it? And the only thing that we could always say is like, well, you know, God says my body is my temple, yet my temple belongs to him. So we don't make that connection. And there's so many verses in the Bible where like it tells you like specifically like how like we melt into each other, and we could like just call abundance just because of our connection, and so many things. But it's true what you said. I feel like the same thing. Like there are so much freedom right now of the way that we think, of the things that we do, of just experiences. And we don't really have that fear of like putting God in the middle of it.
And we have to ask ourselves, is this healthy for us? Like if we look at sex as food, okay? Right now in the sexual revolution, they're saying, hey, do whatever you want to do, whatever feels right to you, right? Whatever feels good. Do whoever you want to do, whatever you want to do. But if we turn that sex into food, is it healthy for you to eat everything? Right. Is it healthy for you just to put everything in your body? No, there's certain foods that they are good, they feel good, but they're not good for you.
Yeah, but then also like, okay, if you talk about foods, you could maybe like start eating the same thing, and you become so satiated with the same thing that it's like, I don't want to eat that anymore. So then I'm going to start looking for something else, more things, better things, more expensive things that maybe like I would never think of. And if you start doing that without your partner and without the blessing of God
and not just
in the
that,
middle
forgetting
of it,
what's the point of sex. Like for me, like sex is a release of energy. It's a way to connect. It's a way to bond with you. It's a way for us to release the stress as well. I mean, we just had a sex date a couple weeks ago, I think it was last week, and we looked at each other like, wow, we need to do this more often, because we just feel so free to be able to do certain things, right?
Right.
But every time that I talk to somebody who has like the body with very little body fat, perfect form, they never eat just for pleasure. They eat because they are training for something. They're eating with a purpose.
Right.
As opposed to us, sometimes we eat just because we feel like eating.
Because it looks good.
Let me just eat it. Let me just order this, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, I feel the same thing with sex. What is the purpose of sex, right? Is it the purpose of sex to just release because I'm stressed out, or is it because you want to connect?
Right.
Now, if you're starving, every meal is gonna feel like it's filet mignon. Same thing. If you have a sexless marriage, you're gonna settle for porn. You're gonna settle for something that is not the best meal.
That's right.
And that's why as men we have to really know like what's the point of sex for us. As you get older, it means different. As you get older, you're not looking for. When you were younger, you wanted to do everything, right? Because it was your hormones. That was your mentality. As you get older, you have to start looking at the energy that you have, and how do you transmit that energy, and how are you able to maintain that energy without wasting energy?
As you say that, it also like it brings me so much joy to know that there is such a younger generation that has such awareness, just, even in the church, there's so many young ladies and men that
Yeah.
are just thinking like, okay, well, I'm not just going to go by what the world says, but I'm going to see like, what does the Bible have to say about my sexuality, marriage, all these things. And I love to watch them. Like for me, it was just like they were scared at the beginning to hear messages like this, but then at the end, it was like I am equipped and I know what I need to do when it comes on my relationship. This is something that we're not talking about, and even like how you said about in a relationship, both men and women, like talk about this in your relationship, because if you don't talk about it, if you don't tell your spouse that this is something that you need and you want in your relationship, it's not going to get done.
I look at a sex as energy, right? And if you're not energetically connected with your partner, you're creating a separation.
Right.
And every time that you have an argument, there is tension. That statistics show that if you have a healthy relationship, that you have having sex often, there is less argument, there's less stress,
Okay.
there's less bickering,
I
right?
like
So, so the more sex you have, the more connected you feel. Why? Because in your brain, every time that you have sex, you're connected to that person, and it sends neurons saying, "This person has my back. This person, is attracted to me. This person is my partner."
The more that we are together,
and the more
connected
sex you have with the same
we feel.
person, the more connected that you feel. Therefore, you're not going to be tearing each other down.
So then imagine like in this sexless marriages, when you don't have sex for a long period of time,
There is no
how
connection.
you start to feel so disconnected, then you feel more angry, resentful, so
And
apart.
then there's the
that-
guilt, there's the shame,
Because you
and
haven't
then,
done
and then it
anything
forces you to start
look somewhere else.
look for something else.
I agree.
And having the pleasure of release in other places, and
That's
that's what creates addictions.
That's
So
right.
let's take a look at this video, because I love George Janko. He's
Yeah.
one of those guys who's really put himself out there as a Christian, as a man of God. And when I listened to this podcast, he was talking about how he struggled with lust in the past. So, Daniel, could you play that?
And I was coming off a stage one time, and Ree was actually recording this situation, and I'm mic'd up. So, like, this is great. But two unbelievably gorgeous girls. Like, I'm talking, like, in my dream, this would happen. They're like, hey, we have a hotel next door. We want to have a threesome with you. And I'm like, just fully bluntly like that. And I was like, wow, that's literally the thing that I've been dreaming about my whole life to do. This was like a year into our relationship, or like
More.
a year and a half.
You pause that in there?
Like a year and a half
Oh,
into our
she's beautiful.
But you see her body language when he's talking about this. She's very closed up. She's very like as he even brings that out, like that was at the beginning of the relationship. The story that he's telling was at the beginning of the relationship, right? So I can imagine like the beginning of the relationship, you're dating a guy who's famous,
and all these women are coming up to him.
want to have a threesome with him, and she's feeling that tension. Because by the way, that's the for most guys, I would say all of us, but for most guys in our mind, that's kind of like the fantasy, right? We're seeing
Right.
that like that's
Biggest fantasy.
When the offer is there, the guy's like, maybe I should take it.
He's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship, but I really want this. This is the dream that I've had all my life.
Go ahead, Daniel.
our relationship, and this is when the fireworks are like, this is my girlfriend now. It's no longer like when I see her, it's like, oh my God, it's that girl. Does she like me? Does she not
Yeah,
like me?
yeah, I know
That like that beginning spark. So I sat there and everybody was giving me the advice of like, dude, like no offense, bro, but if I was in your shoes right now, I wouldn't be in a relationship, bro. You're young, you're like successful. And I was like, okay, cool. Then I'm looking up to my cousins, like older cousins, and they're like, dude, we love Belle. She's a great girl, but if it's meant to be, maybe she'd come back. And I'm like, oh, okay, like yeah, maybe. And then every single person was telling me, he's like, yeah, dude, no offense, but if I was you, and all the advice was great, but I was like, all right, let me go back to the scripture. That's when I fell in love with David.
Put pause in there.
And I'm like, oh,
You see, because most people will fall into that. I wouldn't say temptation, but just the easy way. It's not married.
course.
He's not married. He doesn't owe her an explanation. Listen, I'm a young guy. I'm gonna do what I need to do. Maybe I'll come back later on when I'm more mature. And everybody will say to him, or he was saying, everybody will say to him, listen, just do you, man. If you want to do it, again, what we talked about the food. You're hungry for this. You want to
Just take it,
experience
eat
just
it.
eat it.
Eat it
right?
if the food
but
is
he
there.
was smart enough to say, let me see what the Bible says about
Yeah, but
this.
how many of us really say that? Because there's so many, we let ourselves be influenced by the people that we're surrounded with. And I think that's something like, now we know, like at this age, we could choose and we're very picky about who we associate ourselves with. But back then, like the friends that you have, even the family sometimes that you have, they don't give you the best advice.
So going back to like the young people who are very conscious now, like
I love
this
that.
guy's this is a young guy and he's very aware.
Oh, is he young?
I mean, he's probably late 20s, early 30s.
Really?
Yep.
He looks older.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Wise and old.
Oh, dude, I don't want to do that. So I wanted the heart of David. That's why I made the song called "Give Me the Heart of David."
It was fire. It was good.
Thank you so much.
It was good.
But the one thing that I said is like I don't want to fall to lust. And I'm not gonna lie, bro. Like I was a dog growing up. So when me and my cousins were at the mall, we would just always look at girls' butts or like boobs or like we're very sexually driven men.
Yeah.
And one day I asked God, I was like, God, I want to honor Belle like it's your daughter. Like I can't be having these thoughts.
My
and,
pastor
like,
brought this up to me.
you know what I mean? Like I
The
don't.
person you're with seems God's daughter. Yeah.
And I want to, but it's hard, bro. It's hard when you have patterns of being this dog-like person, and I'm like, this is not fair to Belle. Like I shouldn't even be having these thoughts. And then my mom told me something that blew me away. She goes, those are thoughts, but what are your actions? And I was like, so I shouldn't feel guilty? She goes, you should only feel guilty of what your actions bring. So I told God, I go, God, I don't want to throw everything that me and Belle like had together, because I truly in my heart I feel like she's the one for me.
That's true.
And so we were going back and forth, and I went home and I told her, I said, hey, I need you to pray with me. I'm having these really bad thoughts, and
You pause
I'm
that,
super vulnerable.
Daniel?
And I let her know about it.
I mean, that just caught my attention when he said I went back and told her, because how many men are going to tell their partner, hey, I'm having these thoughts, I'm having this issue? I mean, most of us wouldn't do it. I don't think we looking back, what is the point of telling you certain things? But the reality is that at that point he was vulnerable. He felt like he didn't. Who else can he tell?
And then so many of us as women, when your man comes over and tells you something, you are not in the right space to honor the vulnerability. So it's like blowing up.
You get very defensive, right? You come out like, oh, you having these thoughts? Who you want to sleep with? Who you want?
Or you probably already did, and you're just telling me
already
it was a thought.
judging it, already making us feel like. I remember. I don't know if it was a dream that I had or a dream that you had. But I remember one time I woke up and you were mad at me because you had a dream that I was cheating on you. Yeah. And you were mad at me because I'm like, what did I do?
It's one of those dreams that are so real, and you don't know if it's a dream or is it reality or is it my sixth sense telling me something. So I'm like, spill the beans. What is it really?
It was a dream, woman. It was a dream.
I was still mad.
But you see, that's what, again, going back of acknowledging those thoughts.
And I agree a little bit with what he says, but like if that's all you're thinking, your thoughts eventually become your reality. So if you're thinking about your sexual immorality and threesomes and all this women and boobs and butts, then it's like that's all in your mind. I wouldn't agree. Like there is no action. Eventually there will be the action because for your thoughts that are in your head. I would say stop thinking those things. Acknowledge what you're thinking.
Or just don't put yourself the first thing is
acknowledge your
gotta
thoughts.
acknowledge it. You have to. Don't make them wrong. Because the way I look at it when I teach my guys is there's multiple versions of us.
Right.
There's the warrior, there's the dark warrior, and there's the king, right? Like for me, the warrior is the one that's very driven to go into battle, right? The dark warrior is the one who has to get paid and has to get laid. Yeah. And the king is the one who has more awareness, more conscious of how are we going to
what do I choose?
Expand, right? So knowing that those versions, we all men have those versions. So you can't just be the king because that's not a reality.
Right.
Most of us unconsciously, a dark warrior runs the show. That's when we see a woman and we are already like looking at every area. That's the dark warrior. So, but if you don't feed the dark warrior, it's why he reacts that way. So if you have a healthy sexual relationship, a beautiful woman could drop by and you could admire it, you could appreciate it, but you don't have to start thinking all those thoughts. Why? Because you're already satisfied at home. So the only time that we for me at least, is when I don't feed the dark warrior in other areas. Dark warrior starts to
Wonder
and go into different paths.
Yeah. I would just add to that, like if you're having those thoughts, like you say, like acknowledge them, know that they're there. Don't make them right or wrong, but then you replace it with something else. It's the same thing for us as women. And for us, it's not so much when it comes to like the sexuality part, but the worthiness of it. So like if we don't feel worthy of it, then we're telling ourselves, we're thinking these thoughts. And imagine if you're saying these thoughts to yourself all the time. I'm not worthy. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not, open enough. I don't deserve love. Whatever it is that you're saying yourself, like then you're going to feel that. You're going to feed your heart and your mind. Eventually you're going to believe that. But if you replace those thoughts with something that's positive, and that's what like I tell my daughter, I tell my queens, for every negative thought that you have, bring the awareness and then sandwich it with something positive. So every one you do two, so you could contradict what you're feeling, what you're saying. Because if you get stuck to this, like if you get stuck to the thoughts, eventually
The
something
thoughts will
bad is
consume
going to
you.
happen.
The thoughts will create a belief system.
Yeah.
And eventually actions will follow.
Of course.
Why? Because you keep feeding those thoughts. So
I don't agree with what Mama said there. Sorry, Mama.
So part of why I wanted to bring this to light is because we're all going to struggle with negative thoughts. We're going to
Always.
struggle with lustful thoughts. We're going to struggle with negativity. The illusion that we have to be perfect. That's why, like for me, church has a different feeling now because I've been out of church for the last 10 years. Just because, for me, I believe that church was very programmed to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we found a place where you don't have to be perfect. We can have these conversations
Right.
and let God work in your life as opposed to you trying to be perfect. I tried to be perfect. I played the card. It didn't work out.
Right.
It didn't work out for me. It made more damage than it got me close to God.
Yeah.
And now I just own that I'm an imperfect man. I'm okay with being imperfect. I'm okay allowing God to shape me and mold it. I own my mistakes. I own my actions, and then I learn from them.
That's right. I love what you said. It's true. You're imperfect, but then you're also acknowledging that there's work to be done.
And there's a choice that every single man has to make between the man that you are right now and the man that you want to become.
Yes.
So then if you don't make those choices, and again, it goes back to the beginning of the podcast where I said, give yourself the space to make the choices and ask those questions. Is this going to get me closer to who I want to
Yes.
become?
Yes.
Or just going to get me further away who I want to become? Is this
I
going to get me
agree.
close to what I want or farther away from what I want? So hopefully you find some value in this podcast. Again, perfection is an illusion. We all are work in progress. Connect with us. We have the Leadership Summit coming up April 22nd and 23rd. You're going to be there.
Yes.
If you're a man looking to connect with a tribe of leaders who are going to hold you to a higher standard, make sure you join us. If you're a couple that want to be around power couples,
We're doing a couples retreat.
We're
We're
doing
doing
a
it
couples retreat.
on
What are the dates?
June. We're going to do it June 18th to the 22nd.
and I'll have the team put some links in this video so you can click below. So with that said, learn it, live it, experience it,
love
love
life.
If you receive any value from this conversation, comment, subscribe, and share as we continue to impact more people and take them to the next level.
And please send us your comments and questions so we could answer them in the next podcast.
See you in the next episode.